Hello and welcome to Gender Nebulous episode 20, and we are live on YouTube. It's me, Vicky Hodges, and my lovely co-host over here, Miss Freda Wallace.
I was going to say my own name then in a really dramatic way. I was like, Miss
Okay, let's do that again. And my lovely co-host over here,
Miss Freda Wallace. That's terrible, isn't it? I was like, there's no spontaneity there at all.
No, and I can't edit it because we're live. Sorry. Anyway.
No, that's the thing. Because normally it's really heavily edited. We
won't explain why it's heavily edited, but yes, sometimes it is.
Because of my potty mouth, usually.
Yes. We have people sending comments already, Freda.
Oh, that's Roger.
Roger.
He was
Plankton, 1975. Hello, Roger.
He's had trouble with his internet this week, so I'm glad he's
he's on. So today's discussion, we were going to talk about something that we've been kind of thinking about in relation to all the nonsense that's going on in Scotland with the gender recognition reforms. So we wanted to talk about agency and autonomy, and I guess the question that we're asking is, do transgender people have agency and autonomy over their lives? And we also want to kind of bring in like freedom of expression discussion as well. So this is something that I feel as though we have no agency or autonomy, because all the things we have to go through during transition are kind of controlled by cisgendered people. We have pretty much zero control over, some of the most simple things like getting a new NHS number, changing your driving license. There's all these additional processes that are applied just to trans people, and it's all to do with like getting a note from your doctor and have you got a medical report and et cetera, et cetera. So,
well, everything has to sort of be sanctioned by an authority figure. So your sort of life choices, not just choices. I'm not saying it's like that's a choice, but if you choose to change your name, that becomes a situation where somebody in authority has to rubber stamp it for you.
Yeah, but why?
Which I understand why, in a legal sense, because when it comes down to your identity, that is it's a signifier in a legal sense. So, but there are a lot of other things like certain access to certain healthcare. Like, obviously, a lot of trans people are on hormone treatment, and you have to, because I think one of the main problems is, for me, it comes under psychiatric care, like mental health, and you're kind of screened for that. It's like, you're given counselling, but the main distress and the reason I think you could say that mental health issues are involved because of the stress of being trans itself. It's not. It's like because
exactly
as a medical condition, if you formalize it that way, but it's not really a problem. It becomes a problem because the hurdles you've got to jump over to get to where you want to be, and that initial thing of going to the doctor and saying, I've been feeling, I'm not happy about this and that can be a really big step. And if you can hit a dead end straight away there if you don't have an understanding GP, or if you don't have somebody that you feel like you're being listened to.
Yeah. So I mean, let's just start with what is the definition of agency? I mean, I looked it up in the dictionary, and the dictionary definition is free will, the ability to take action or to choose what action to take. And the definition of autonomy, the ability to make your own decisions without being controlled by anybody else. So, those are the dictionary definitions of those two words. And if you let's just start. I've got a list of things here that we have to go through. So let's just start with the first one, like healthcare provision. Unless you can afford to go private, you're stuck in this GIC system. It's very much a postcode lottery. It's a different, for every area in the country, there's a different length of waiting period. Some are years long, some are not as many years long, but they're all extremely long.
I think we're quite lucky.
We're lucky because we got into the one in Manchester.
I mean, I say lucky. You shouldn't think of it like that, right? It shouldn't be, thank you that something's actually working.
But exactly. We've just seen in the courts recently this case around, the NHS is supposed to provide service within 18 weeks for this, and that case was lost on some technicality around it not being an actual requirement. I think that's the excuse they used. But it's being challenged.
Yeah. Well, it has to be challenged. I mean, just because you don't win, the winning isn't necessarily the end. Because like if nobody says anything, and it becomes like, oh well, it's like sometimes the argument for going private, like say, oh yeah, you can afford it, go private, and then it relieves the wait times for other people. But sometimes if you disappear from NHS statistics, if you go private, you're not putting pressure on the NHS. If even if you can afford to go private, you're still going to need some NHS at some point. You know what I mean? Because you don't ever completely disappear from the NHS system. So when people say, "Oh, I can go private, I can afford to do it this way, I can afford the hormones," fine. There are a couple of services you can use to.
Yeah, I mean, you can pretty much do everything private, including any surgeries you want to have.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not cheap. It's very expensive.
But I actually, even if I could afford, like I say, if I had the money to just go straight ahead and do what I wanted to do, I'd still want to be an NHS patient, because I think being part of that statistic because if you disappear from statistics, they don't know how many trans people are seeking care and seeking help. So if you can say, like, if there is a way to measure the waiting list in a realistic way, then but then again, the argument is that why take up a space on a waiting list when you can just go and pay for it? So
yeah, but then all the kind of things that you're looking for when you're in that GIC system, hormone treatment, hair removal, voice coaching, GRS, all those things, I feel as though I don't have any agency or autonomy in requesting those things, because every single thing that you ask for, it's kind of like you've got to pass the test that they've set. You've got to meet the criteria they want. It feels as though we're being there's gatekeepers at every single step.
Well, I had to wait quite a while before I got any kind of NHS, because I was paying for like hair removal myself.
I've done that too.
Because I can afford that, so I thought, why wait? Let's get on with it.
I mean, the most affordable part of going private is you to get your kind of initial assessment with a private place, and maybe get started with hormones. I mean, it's not cheap, but it's the most affordable part of it. When you start looking at hair removal, that's expensive, unless you can find someone who's doing it within the community. And then surgery is just, off the chart.
Well, I was just very disappointed to learn that hair extensions are not included in the NHS treatment, and lipstick's expensive. Do you know what I mean? It's like, people don't think about this kind of thing. I want a prescription for the MAC counter. You know what I mean?
Well, you could ask, see what they say. Next time you speak to your GIC, ask them if they'll give you a prescription for makeup.
Yeah.
I don't think they will.
Yeah, they should do.
You could ask. And then
you think about the amount of money I've spent over the years.
Yeah, I mean, did you go through the process of getting a new NHS number? Have you tried that one?
Yeah.
So even that's not straightforward. Most GP surgeries don't even know about the process. I mean, what you can do if you are trans and you want to get your records changed at your GP, there is a process, and it's on a website which is pcsc.england.nhs UK patient registrations, and there's a process in there where they spell out in lots of kind of detail what the GP surgery is supposed to do to create you a new NHS number and transfer all your information from the old file to the new file. And you get a new number. That was quite
easy, actually.
A lot of people don't know about it, and I think all you need is just to do that. You just need a depot, so that's fairly straightforward and easy.
You see, I know I keep saying lucky, and perhaps it's not luck. It's how it should be, really. But I've been very lucky in the GPs that I've had, because when but this was like when I came out and changed my name 3 years ago nearly now, the GP that I saw, because I was building it up to be something that I've got. I was sort of practicing what I was going to say. I was going to say, pretending I was sat in the doctor's right. I've been feeling like that. I just said what I wanted, and she was like, yeah, we'll get you in touch with the gender clinic, blah, blah, blah. And it was like a 5-minute
Did they do
appointment.
the NHS number change for you?
Not then, because that was just my initial kind of me saying I need to speak to a gender psychologist. But the thing with me, my journey has been quite a long one, because I tried to come out when I was 17, 18. And my mum took me to what was then a child psychiatrist, because there was no gender clinic in Bolton or Manchester. It didn't exist. The nearest one was in London at Charing Cross or something. And so the only person that I could see was a psychiatrist who was a general kind of teenager psychiatrist or something like that. I don't know. And it was just really scary at the time. And that the difference with one of the reasons it put me off seeking help for so long is that bad experience that I had when I was in my teens.
Yeah.
But when I saw this new doc, because she was quite a young doctor, she was on the ball. She knew exactly what I was talking about. She just looked at me and she was like, "Yeah, we'll get you signed up with a gender clinic. You might have to wait a year and a half." She was realistic about how long I would have to wait, but it felt like that was enough, just the fact that somebody had put me in touch with somebody.
Yeah, I mean, my GP, the GP I had at the time was, very similar. They were very, keen to make sure that the referral was done. And she pretty much called me the same night after I've been in and said, "I've done it. I've put in your, your referral." I mean, that side of things were great. But when it came to updating the NHS number, they didn't have a clue what to do. I had to go, as the patient, had to go and find this process and give them the information and basically show the GP surgery how to do it. I mean, I shouldn't have to do that. It's like
I just want to say hello to Rebecca in the chat.
Yeah, hi, Rebecca.
I think we've got a sum total of 2 people talking to us. That's but anyway, and Rebecca's in the US, so we're talking about the NHS, and I don't know what it's like in the US, like to seeking kind of any help with this kind of thing, because I should imagine it depends on what state you're in and if what the political situation is in that particular state. Because I know there are states now where they're trying to ban any kind of trans healthcare or trans pathway. So I mean, that is something that I would fight tooth and nail for. If that was change in the UK, where they were trying to change, the age at which you could get referred to a gender clinic and things like that. But you see, the TERFs, that's what they want. They don't
that's what
want
they're trying to do. What the gender critics are trying to do.
They don't believe trans is a real condition. They just think we're just deluded men, and that's it. That's the only way they can see it. And it's like, and there's nothing you can say to convince these people of how you feel about yourself or what that internal monologue is inside of you that doesn't line with your body or whatever. Even saying that, it's not even that for me. It's just to do with how I am socially and how I relate to people, and I just don't know any different than how I am. So when I was identifying male, I was anxious and I knew there was something I wasn't expressing, and that's how I know this is right, because it's as simple as being able to breathe and being able to relax and be able to relax around people, be a social being, be effective in the workplace, be effective in a social way, and that's all it matters to me.
So
I'm not bothered about
these things that we're talking about, these things that we, these little processes we have to go through. I mean, you could, in a way, say that this is self-ID because we choose to go and do these, which is, I guess, is true. But they are
when you say choose,
they're heavily gate kept.
Yeah, but you have to be careful when you say choice.
No, but you choose to update your driving license, don't you?
Well, yeah.
You choose to go and tell your doctor you need to get a referral to a GIC. Those are like choices.
Well, I was going to say,
it's a choice based on something that you internally need to do.
They are choices, but it sounds really silly. But when
it's like you don't have a choice, but it's a choice at the same time.
When I got my passport, and I saw my picture and it said Freda female, that felt. I mean,
it felt good.
It felt good because even though it it's just a document. It's like the government. It's like, what does that matter really? But that's the world we live in. We live in a world of legal realities, and that's why we have identification. That's why ID matters. It's like, you know, the idea of the self is not just one thing. It's that we've got a kind of, you know, social self. We have a political self, and we have that legal self, and they've all got to align. They've all, because like before I came out, I was living a kind of weekend lifestyle where I would go off into Manchester and spend all weekend in Manchester, basically being Freda. And then when I came back on a Monday, I'd have to compartmentalize that
Freda back in the cupboard.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. And that was mentally damaging. It's not sustainable to pretend or to cut off that expression. Now that I will admit, when I was doing that in Manchester and going out and clubbing, that was a very extreme version. It was like a hyper real kind of version of myself, because I was doing like proper extreme makeup but it was like a freedom of expression thing. But that's why it's not sustainable. So I had to sort of think of a way to be myself in a realistic way.
In a realistic way all the time.
Yeah, because that's the real world we navigate. Yeah. Like when we go to work, we have to be a different kind of social being. It's called like code switching, isn't it? So like the way I am with my parents or my family is different than the way I am with my friends, and the way I'm different with my friends and the way I am with people at work. And it's not that we're different personalities, it's just that we have this mechanism inside our brains that knows there's a different way to behave in certain situations, unless you're completely balmy and you just don't get any of that. And there are people like that, and I'm sure we've all met them. But most people, I mean, I can be a bit like, I can forget where the hell I am.
So Rebecca's posted a couple of messages that I'll just read them out. It's by state, but also whether it's rural or urban. Cities have diverse resources, rural communities don't. General healthcare is poor and expensive. Many can't afford general health. Many are on their own and reach out for support and info over social media. Yeah, so I mean, I think it's very much dependent on where you are and what your circumstances are.
Yeah, and it's so weird that something that is like I made a thing on Twitter, an update, and I was kind of joking. I was saying, in my world, if I was running for a political party, my policy would be that when you're born, everybody is non-binary. You don't have a gender marker, right?
Yeah,
now that sounds like
non-defined yet.
That sounds like a really radical idea, because doctors just look at penises and look at vaginas and go girl boy.
Well, the doctors like to categorise, don't they? They like to categorise based on what they think is
exactly, because that's the scientific way. Yeah. Because you need to have names for things. But within a binary paradigm, that is too simple. It's too simplistic to say.
Well, you can say based on what you see, and then with the caveat that you can change it later if you want, without going through all kinds of nonsense processes.
So as an experiment, it's not really an experiment you could do, but if there was a way to do that experiment where all babies were just suddenly not categorized as male and female, how many of those babies would align with the gender they're ascribed? Because I'm pretty sure, based on what we know, if
there wasn't so much pressure to not be allowed to do it?
It's not about clothing. It's not about how you necessarily express yourself. It's just something fundamental about that physicality versus your psychology. So, and then you've got the missing link there with the endocrinology side of it. I think that's the missing link between the physical, what people call basic biology, although there's no such thing as basic biology really, because like the more you look through a microscope, you don't get answers, you just get more questions. That's how science works. The more people, it's like when people look out into space, and the further they look, and they just, right, we've got to the end of the universe now, what do we do? But right, going off on a bit of a tangent.
You are.
But the idea that that the doctors will just, it's too simplistic to have male and female. I mean, I understand that works, it seems to work in most societies.
I mean, that would be okay to do that, providing there was a really simple way of changing it later, and you'd have to go through all this complicated process and legalities. That's my complaint of the system. How much it's controlled. So if we just go back to our list of things you have to do, driving license. I'm sure you've done yours, Freda. That was probably one of the first things you did.
Well, I had to, because of work.
I mean, that's really easy, because all you need to change a driving license, name and gender, is a deed poll, a statutory declaration, or a GRC. Now, most of us at that stage wouldn't have a GRC and probably didn't have a statutory declaration, but you would have done a deed poll.
Do you remember that car insurance thing called Sheila's Wheels?
Sheila's Wheels.
And apparently you could get cheaper car insurance if you're a lady, because ladies have less accidents. And I was like, well, this is the flaw in this policy, because if I identify as female now, you owe me about 5 years back paying car insurance.
Actually, car insurance was in my experience was the easiest thing to do. All I did was call them up and say, I've changed my name, I've changed my gender on the phone. They didn't want a deed poll. They said, okay, no problem, we'll change it. Just like that.
Yeah, most things are like that. I mean, one of the weirdest things I had was my phone company, my phone provider, and I told them repeatedly, and every so often I'd get a text, and it'd say, "Dear Mr. Freda."
Yeah, I've had stupid things like that.
It's not nice, but I mean, I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, Mr. Victoria Hodges. Yeah, it's like
Mr. Freda.
Did you actually read the envelope before you sent it? Yeah.
Mr.
So
Freda.
the next thing on the list is the passport. So this is a little harder. You still don't need to have a GRC to change passport. What they're asking for is a GRC, a new birth certificate, or a letter from your doctor, a deed poll, and some evidence that you've used your name. So it's a little harder than the driving license, because a passport is kind of like primary ID. But, again, most people, ID. When they're doing this, they won't have a GRC. They won't have the new birth certificate at that point. So it's based on a letter from your doctor. So, the gatekeeping for getting a passport is, again, it's going back to that medical thing. You need proof from your doctor. Now, what is your doctor saying in that letter? Is that, this person is trans and it's okay to give them a passport? I mean, there's no relationship between having a passport and having some medical...
No. They have
condition.
To know.
It's weird. Why a doctor? Why not somebody else? Why not a solicitor, for example?
Well, it's just that rubber stamping, isn't it? That authority figure that can say this person is genuinely trans or whatever.
Yeah, but what does that matter in terms of having a passport, which is basically a document to say that this person is this citizenship from this country? What does it matter what gender you are?
Well, it doesn't.
Or if you're trans, it has no bearing at all.
But what if you're non-binary and you identify as non-binary?
Yeah, I mean, UK passports, you can't do that. Other countries, you can have an X marker, you can have no marker for your sex. I mean, other countries do that.
So it's just because we're so used to. There's no legal reason, really. There's no actual real-world reason.
If you were to ask them to justify why you want a doctor's letter to change your passport name and gender, I mean, well, what's the answer? Is there some reason why that needs to be done via a doctor's letter? I find that really weird. It's like gatekeeping that you just don't need.
Well, it's just this whole legal bureaucracy, isn't it? And it goes back to, these things go back years and years. They're archaic, some of these the laws on the statute books, to do with identity and identity fraud or whatever.
Yeah.
But this is just reminded me of how much bureaucracy is involved. I haven't even applied for gender recognition yet because I just haven't got around to it.
I don't know why you've not done it. You've not done it because you look at the process and you think, wow, that's such a pain in the neck to do. There's a lot of people, just the thought of doing that process puts a lot of people off because it's complicated, it's difficult. There's a lot of steps to it. There's a lot of prerequisites to it. And I understand why people are put off by it because it's very intrusive, and there's that kind of thought in the back of your mind that why do I need to go through this bullshit to prove who I am to a faceless panel who don't even know me. All I want to do is change this document. I've changed all these others.
Well,
why can't I change this birth certificate? It's like, just let me change it. Why complicate my life?
This is why the argument for self-ID is simple, because at the moment, like when we do send all this stuff off to the government, they're not going through everything and going, is this person a real person, or are they really trans? They can't even think like that. All they've got to know is you've got all the bits that they request, and it's just a box ticking exercise.
Yeah. So why do you need a panel of people to review? What you've done. I mean, when you send off for a passport, does your passport go through a panel of people to make, okay, now let's just check this Victoria Hodges, is she a suitable person for a passport? They don't do that. But why do they do that when you want to change a birth certificate? It's just beyond my comprehension. So, we know that the UK current system, which is applicable in all parts of the UK, Scotland have tried to change it but haven't quite got there yet. But the GRC process, a 2-year waiting period. Now, what the hell is that about? Why do you have to wait 2 years? Because by the point where you're actually applying for GRC, you've probably already been waiting for the GIC for 2 or 3 years. Or, you've probably already been through all kinds of process document updates before you even get to that point. So why do you then need to have this, like, they're imposing this 2-year period, which I think originally was supposed to be a test to see if you could be successful in your new gender. I mean, it's so ridiculous.
But how would you test that? I
don't know. How would you fail that test?
It's not like a driving test where somebody takes you out.
Okay, it's like you have to go to a test centre to prove that you're trans or something. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, I think what they're doing really is they're looking at it from a psychological point of view and saying, is this person comfortable? Are they happy? Are they, are they realistically adjusted into this? Because the doctor, like when the gender psychiatrists or whatever they are, that's what they're looking for. They're not looking to. There's no test for how a woman should behave or what a woman is. It's just whether somebody is adjusting.
But who came up with 2 years? 2 years, Freda.
Yeah, because it's just gatekeeping. But it doesn't even come down to that, because there could be a lot of reasons in somebody's life why they're not happy, and the trans bit might not be. It might, because people have lots of underlying mental health issues, and like for some people, I know this happens. Like people that have had, like bipolar disorders and stuff, they don't have a cat in hell's chance of going down this route, because it's not that the doctors will stop them, it's just because they have a record where the doctor will be very nervous about prescribing, or they might be nervous about ticking that box to say, yeah, this person can have a gender recognition certificate, and that is a stigma. But we understand why it happens, because the main problem is that gender binary. It's like you have to be one or the other, and then unless you have always expressed a kind of androgyny throughout your life, and then that's also on your medical records, that, like, say if you've seen psychiatrists previously and that's how they know you. But it's like, because a lot of the time, the first time you're ever going to see a therapist is, as a trans person, is when you start talking about being trans or want to change in your gender. So they don't really have a history of you. Whereas if you did have a mental health history before that, then they do judge you on that, because I know that happens. Because like people's medical notes will have indicators about what they've been prescribed in the past, maybe, and it's, I just get really nervous about
that can be used against you in this.
Yeah, not
situation.
I mean, it can be used to say, look, you've got to be careful with this person, because I don't know. I understand why they do it, and I can see there could be a case for like trying to steer certain people away from, in situations that could make them more vulnerable. But
I'm not aware of any other countries who have similar gender recognition processes where they put you through a 2-year wait period. I don't think there are any other countries that do that.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just it's kind of
bureaucracy.
The medical profession it's like when it comes down to medications or anything like that.
What they're saying is that you're a trans person and you know nothing about yourself. we're the experts. We're going to tell you everything. It's all based on what we agree and allow you to do. No agency, no autonomy, as we said at the beginning of the show. It's all stripped away from you in that process. You also need to get 2 medical reports. One isn't good enough. You have to have 2. So one from your GP to say what they're prescribing, and one from the gender recognition, the GIC people. I guess it's the psychiatrist or the doctor that's looking at your case. They have to provide the other letter, and that has kind of the, all the details around the gender dysphoria stuff.
Yeah.
So, could that not just be one medical report? Do we really need the second one?
I'm listening, but can I just stop you there just to say hello to Jonah?
Sure.
Because my friend Jonah has just put "Hail Satan." So.
Yeah, and Dunham Red had a comment there as well. The more senior applicants in this process could die before they even reached the end of the ridiculous process. It happened to a friend of theirs. We're not all spring chickens. Yeah, good point.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I've lost where we're up to with the.
We're just talking about the medical reports, and why do we need to?
Yeah, I mean, I can understand, like in a.
Let's just have one, and it just gives you the brief details that you need to know. I mean, we don't need to have 2. That's ridiculous, and it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to come from, the GIC process, which takes several years to get to that stage where you can even get that report. So this 2-year waiting period is kind of a moot point, because to actually get to the point where you can get that report, you may have had to wait 3 or 4 years anyway. So it's ridiculous, totally ridiculous.
But all this stuff exists so people can have a gender recognition certificate, right? So everything else you could just go and do privately.
Yeah.
Or you're not going to be.
It's this gender recognition certificate, and the only purpose of this gender recognition certificate is so you can go and get a new birth certificate. So it's not like you do anything with a gender recognition certificate other than use it to get a new birth certificate. I mean, it's crazy system.
So you can understand why people are scared and nervous, because all of a sudden all
heavily
that
bureaucratic,
all that policing of people and understanding they have of trans people is like the medical profession is dealing with it, but actually no, it's not about that. It's about people's, as you say, autonomy. Yeah. And you can be a trans person, be completely out as trans and never ever have a medical intervention at all. Yeah. That's just not necessary.
And all these things we're talking about, you could be denied because the medics don't agree with you.
Yeah, exactly. So you're always going to be living. I mean, you can always just live as the person. You're just never going to change. You're always going to be the person you are, whether you come to terms with it or not. But it matters.
So I've not finished on the GRC list here. There's, we've done the 2-year period, the medical reports.
I thought we'd come to the end.
The statutory declaration, which is the easy bit. That sounds like the hard bit, but that's actually the easy bit. That's just a form you fill in, and somebody witnesses it, and it's like, yeah, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. Like, hello, that's kind of obvious. And then, they want a bunch of evidence based on the 2-year period to prove that you've been using your name, that you've been living in role, blah, blah, blah. So that whole thing is extremely difficult. It's very tightly controlled, and it's gatekeepers at every step. So, one of the things you can't do until you've been through that is change anything related to your taxes and your gender marker on your tax. You can change your name, you can change all your details, but you can't change your gender marker until you've got the gender recognition certificate.
That's weird, isn't it?
It is weird. So that's then sent off to the tax office. The tax office updates the records and informs your employer. That's bizarre.
It's so weird because in every other way,
so something to do with taxes. It's like the government can't handle you changing your gender, and they don't support non-binary people at all. That's not allowed. Doesn't exist in the UK system.
It just goes to show, doesn't it, where the power lies in law. Yeah, and it comes down to bloody tax,
money,
which is boring.
So whilst you're doing all this stuff, most people who work, they're also having to go through a process at work most companies that I know of who do this, they offer what's called a transitioning at work process. So this is where you have to go and approach your HR department and go through pretty much all the little processes they have in the work environment for updating all your details, updating all your IT stuff, any accounts you have. Like it took me the good part of probably 7 months to update all my stuff at work, and there's still things that pop up today, several years later, where that's not been changed because so and so didn't do something in IT. And there's some IT system that's still carrying the old information that's not been updated. I mean, it's just never ending. And you can't update your tax records at work again until you've got this GRC and HMRC have been informed, and then you can update your tax records.
Do you know what? Bizarre. That sounds really, really fucking boring.
It is boring, but that is how stupid this whole damn system is.
Well, I mean, I think because. I mean, obviously I work for the NHS, so everything's kind of centralised. So if you change your name on one thing, it kind of, you know what I mean? It's very,
Well, I mean, the company I work for, we have overseas customers and we use their systems. So their systems are, in the US have to be updated. So, try telling some company in Texas that, by the way, Vicky wants details changing from male to female. You imagine how difficult that is and how long that takes. We're not doing that. Oh, okay, well.
So I mean, these are sort of things. So yeah, I mean,
all kinds of stupid things like that.
Yeah, but I think mine's been pretty simple because I don't know. But
not everybody does all these things. I'm not saying that you have to do all these things. A lot of people only choose to do certain things, and that they're happy with that. That's fine.
Well, like I said, none of this changes anything about your actual transness or whatever it is that makes
the bureaucracy that goes with it.
It's like this is one of the problems that people have with the self-ID law and what's been in the news this week about the gender recognition reform, and they think that suddenly this allows people to be trans or allows people to be female that would have been that doesn't matter. It's not going to create more trans people. It might make the process easier, so you might show up on statistics. It doesn't mean there are actually more of us in the world. Do you know what I mean? It's like I was talking.
I think someone thinks we've opened a trans factory somewhere and we're making humans. I don't know.
Yeah, but it just means that we will show up in statistics more. Especially one of the reasons people who are anti-trans don't like it is because we'll show up in crime statistics. Because like when people are attacked and when people are abused or whatever it is, a lot of trans women who won't be fully out or won't have a GRC, the crimes will be recorded as male.
Yeah,
and they don't show
vice
up.
Versa, of course.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So that is an issue to do with statistics. Now, we do unfortunately live in that world of numbers and statistics, so it matters, and it's really boring, talking about all this bureaucracy. This is boring.
One of the things we were supposed to talk about in the last podcast was the census, and we kind of skipped it for some reason. I don't know, but it turns out that the 2021 census, there's 48,000 trans women and 48,000 trans men in the UK out of a total of 262,000 people who identify as either trans or non-binary or didn't define what it was exactly, but said they weren't the same as their assigned sex at birth. So 262,000 people is all it is.
So is that
in the whole of the UK?
Lot.
It's not a lot. It's a tiny percentage. I think is it 0.5 or less than that? I don't know, but we're not even talking about a lot of people. So
no, and a lot
even
of
if you allow them all to do it, if you allowed every single one of those people to change their ID, change their get a GRC, it would make absolutely no difference to anybody's lives at all, except those people would be treated with more dignity and respect.
Yeah, it just makes our lives easier. It just makes it's just less forms to fill in. You know what I mean? It's like that's it, really. That's what it comes down to.
And then all this nonsense with what's been going on in Scotland. If you actually step back a little bit and go and look at let's go and look at a country that is renowned for its kind of how they do this properly. So I'm half Canadian, So my Canadian self thought, oh, I'm going to go and look at the Canadian process. So the Canadian process, they used to have, I think up until 2020, they used to require people to have had surgery before they would allow this to be done. But that was challenged and it was changed. So the rules today are, there's an application form you have to fill in, obviously, and a fee. That's okay. I agree with both those things. There's a statutory declaration required and a letter from a doctor. So I don't really understand why you need a statutory declaration for these things. Maybe it's some kind of legal requirement above and beyond just signing a normal form. I don't really know. But in my view, you could get rid of that because you're signing a form and the form is countersigned by somebody, in a kind of like a lawyer or a doctor or something anyway. So you could say that the stat dec is kind of above what you actually really need.
I think
letter from your doctor, again, it's that medical thing. They've still got that going on, but I think it's really easy in Canada to go and do that. You don't have to. You're not waiting several years to get a letter from a GIC because they don't really have those over there. It's done through just your normal doctor. The process is interesting because it also has there's a process within it for people under the age of 17 as long as they have parental approval. So that's children are covered. There's an option to have an X on your birth certificate if you wish, and there's also an option to have nothing. So the whole thing is done in 6 to 8 weeks, costs 60 Canadian dollars, which is about £30-40, and you've got none of this GRC nonsense. You have to get a certificate. You've got no waiting periods, and you've got no panel that your application has to go through. So, much better system. If they can do that in Canada, that has a population of approaching 30 million, why can't they do it in Scotland? Why can't they do it in England? Why can't they do it in Wales?
They are making progress in a lot. But if you look at where they do have self-ID and they do have a simpler system, it tends to be, there's a lot of countries like Germany and Spain have just gone through that process. And they've got a very simple, I don't know if it's what we would call self-ID, but it's very sort of like your Canadian version there you mentioned. I think it's more like that. So, but the way it's portrayed in this country is like, it's like a complete panic. Like, oh my God, you can't do, there's so many lobby groups and people against us that are always in the media. That's why I've been going on the telly and talking about it, because I've heard so much nonsense talked about it that I think, right, I've got, at least I can go in there and with the facts, and actually speak as a trans person and say, look, this is what I've experienced and this is my point of view. Because most of the other opinions are coming from lobby groups and people that want to scare people for whatever nefarious reasons. I think with the Scottish thing, I think there's a lot riding on that Scottish independence thing, and I think those two things.
Yeah, it's definitely tied in with that, isn't it?
And there's the wrangling in Westminster, with the various, like when you look at the state of UK politics at the moment, I can't tell the difference between the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, or you see
at the moment it's red Conservatives or blue Conservatives.
Everything. So there are people on the fringes that I respect, but I don't know. I've lost all faith in
me too.
That as a possible way to change things. And like when you see Nicola Sturgeon, she seems like a sort of beacon of hope.
Yeah. Can we have the SNP in charge of the whole of the United Kingdom? I mean, that would be better, wouldn't it?
And they've got the amazing Mary Black.
Yeah,
she's amazing.
She is.
Yeah.
So we have an interesting comment from Sarah Warner. She's saying British people are not allowed to step back and look at the international context. The media simply don't report on what's going on in other countries. I mean, that is so true. We're never allowed to see how easy it is in these other countries to do what we're trying to do. It's not reported on because they don't want you to know that. That would be that would be dangerous to let the English people know. It's easy, it's being done overseas.
Well, there's a sort of arrogance to that, isn't there? It's that arrogance of that British exceptionalism that we know best,
absolutely.
And we put our mark on the world through the empire. It's like
it's time to change all
it's
that
all
nonsense.
over. Britain sunk. That ship sunk with Brexit.
Sank a long time ago.
That is a strain of this actually that I'm interested in, because
it is.
Like people are frightened.
What about the religious
of
influence in all this as well? In the House of Lords. I mean, that has to have an effect.
Your bonkers baronesses going on. But,
so it's all this, this British, we're British, we don't do those kind of things.
A lot of the people that are against, we spoke about lobby groups and things like that, and we know where it's coming from. But a lot of them get a lot of funding from Christian groups. And, have you heard of Miriam Cates?
Yes.
She was the one speaking in the House of Commons this week. Mm-hmm. And her complaint is, I was shouted down by the men in the room as if it's like, this is not, you weren't shouted down by just men, you were shouted down because what you're saying is rubbish. And so they're using this idea that I'm the woman and women need to have their voices. No, it's not women's voices. It's your voice is the exclusionary, backward-looking voice.
Yeah, that's what they're shouting down. It's what you're saying, it's not who you are.
And it's like as soon as you get the slightest bit of passion in the House of Commons now, as soon as there's anybody that's got the slightest bit of backbone and you get the impression that they care about what they say, it's like, no, down with that. Let's not, we can't be having that. You can't be having people with any kind of conviction.
You can't be having people with agency and autonomy.
Yeah, because it stands out now because we're not used to it. So when somebody is really frustrated and you can tell they're actually speaking from, even it doesn't matter if what they're saying is right or wrong. It's just the fact that they care about what they're saying. It's kind of a shock because it's so rare. Because I don't watch a lot of House of Commons debates, I'll admit, but when you just plod on, don't know, it's like you're like, shoot me now. It's like, but when there is a good argument in Parliament, when there is, it's like, it's sort of it gets you going, and it brings your faith back into humanity that people actually do care about politics. So to see somebody actually shouting in the room is good. You shout back, don't go, oh, no, please don't shout at me. No, just get shouting back, and we'll see who wins. I'm not saying that everybody should just fight and shout and bawl in the House of Commons, but did
you notice when this was going through the Scottish Parliament? Did you notice how calm and collected the Scottish Parliament was? Everybody took it in turns to speak. Yeah, there was a bit of shouting going on in the public gallery, but the politicians on the floor, everything was done in a very orderly way. And I was comparing that to what would happen in the Westminster parliamentary.
See, Westminster
totally different, like a bunch of animals in Westminster, and grown-ups in Scotland. This is what is going on.
This is the thing with Westminster. The way it's built, it's like it looks like all those buildings, those oldie-worldy buildings that look like Hogwarts. They look like Hogwarts and they look like public schools. Those men are used to being in those kind of buildings. They're kind of like, and they feel like entitled to be there because all their institutions look like that. Now, if you look at the Scottish Parliament, if you look at the European Parliament,
nice,
they're very modern buildings.
Modern building with all the facilities you need.
Yeah. So they're not imposing. They're not made to make you feel small. The building is made to be welcoming and calming, and so all these institutions in Westminster, get rid of them. Honestly,
get rid of them. I would say that building, the Houses of Parliament, sell it off as a hotel complex or a tourist attraction.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
go and build a proper modern Parliament somewhere else. Maybe in the middle. Maybe in the middle of the country somewhere, not in London.
Like Manchester.
Yeah, in Manchester, for example. Make it into a modern Parliament with all the facilities, and then on the issue of paying politicians, an allowance to have a second home because they have to go to Parliament. Well, my proposal would be we'll build a big hotel complex where they can stay when they're in Parliament, and there's offices that they can use. Everything's provided. We don't need to pay you any extra money. That's how I would set it up. Get rid of that tourist attraction in London. We don't need that rubbish.
No, I'm just sick of seeing these like backbenchers coming on talk radio and just talking absolute nonsense. There's so many the political careers never end because they end up on like look at Anne Widdecombe. They always wheel her out, don't they, to come and say some shite on
who cares
Jeremy
what she
Vine.
thinks? It's like come on, move on.
I mean, but she's an entertaining person. That's what people like about her. You know, she's a personality, and I think politics does create these kind of really interesting personalities sometimes that, you know, you might not like them, but, you know, they're kind of compelling to watch. And she might come under that in that category because that's why she gets booked to come on these talk shows. But
I'd rather listen to, is it Miriam Margolyes, whatever her name is?
Miriam Margolyes.
Yeah, she's hilarious. I love that lady.
Yeah. I mean, I want to see the whole of government collapse. That's how I feel about it. I don't know.
You heard it first on Gender Nebulous.
Like I said before, you know, with climate change and everything, as it's going to get hotter and hotter, nobody's going to be able to live in London. So as the temperatures get hotter, people are going to emigrate further and further north. And before you know it, Scotland is going to be the only place you're going to be able to live.
The big question is then, Freda, when are we moving to Scotland? When are we going to relocate Gender Nebulous to Scotland?
Maybe soon. I'm going to claim my castle. The campsite.
I think, you know, it definitely feels as though that is on the cards because, you know, because I'm half Canadian, I have today, I can admit, I have been looking into, you know, what would it take to move back to Canada?
To Canada?
Yeah.
Oh.
No, because, you know, I'm not born Canadian. I'm born, you know, British. But because I lived there for such a long time, I was able to apply for Canadian citizenship. So I'm dual national. So I could move back, I could work there, I could live in Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver, you know, one of the three big cities. But it's such a wrench to move because I've moved so many times. You know, it's so expensive and you have to find a job, you have to kind of reestablish yourself yet again. But there's so many benefits when it comes to the political situation and how they treat people like us. And you know, not just that, there's all kinds of other benefits about living in Canada over living in the UK. So I'm thinking about it. You know, another option is move to Scotland, which is a lot better than England in a lot of senses. You know, so I'm sure I'm not the only trans person thinking these things.
Well, there was an article, I think it was in Vice, about trans women that are leaving the country.
Yeah, leaving the country because of these issues.
They're just sick of
it.
They're just sick of it, and I think the England specifically has just become toxic. You know, the debate around trans issues is completely toxic now.
Well, it's good to see Scotland and Wales resisting. I mean, that is good, but they just don't have the power. They don't have the devolved power to do it as, you know, strongly as they need to.
Yeah, that might. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen next with the. Where are we up to with the, you know, the government?
Oh, it's going to be quite amusing when they kind of, you know, the reason why the UK breaks up is because of the trans issue. I mean, that's going to be fun, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm watching that, but anyway, if it lets me get on telly and make a bit of money talking to idiots on talk radio, then I'm all for it.
Well, your friend is it Jonah?
Jonah, yeah. Oh, don't ignore Jonah.
I'm Norwegian. Might move there and become a Viking. Yeah, I mean, there's another option.
You'd have to go back in time a few thousand years, but yeah. I mean, I like the reason I don't really think about moving is because I love Manchester so much. It's all my sort of social and my art stuff and all that.
Yeah, I mean, my family's here. It would be a wrench to have to move. I don't have to yet. But, you know, as things deteriorate like this, you do start having these thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's like any kind of exodus. It's like, you know, where's our promised land? That's what is there a land of trans people where we can all go and... No, actually, that would wind me up being around trans women all day. Some of the most moaning bitches I've ever met in my life.
Oh, God.
I want to go to an island that's full of, like... You know,
I think we should. You know, in the remaining few minutes we have, I think we should talk about your most recent appearance on TV.
Oh God, yeah. Well, it wasn't too bad. It was with Susan Smith again from For Women Scotland.
Yeah. So
the only motivation for them is that this For Women Scotland thing. It's just they should really be honest and call the group Anti-Trans Scotland because that's what they are. But they can't say that because they don't have the courage to say that. And if they did say that, they know that nobody would take them seriously.
So we did your previous interview with Susan Smith. Well, not interview with Susan Smith, but with Susan Smith on the same Talk TV thing. We did a reaction video to that. I don't think we need to do one for this most recent.
No, it was interesting though because I kind of made the same points. But
what was the topic? Was it GRA?
Yeah. But initially the framing of the discussion was that this is going to make it easier for young people to decide to be trans. The typical kind of nonsense. And the presenter Ian Collins, I mean, he's just a bit of a robot, really. He'll just read the script. But he understood that coming.
He seemed to be really giving you some proper support in that.
Yeah. Because he realised the way that Susan Smith was. She was just saying, because I interrupted her. And she was upset about that. She said, "See, that's very male behaviour."
You did that last time. You always do that. No, if you didn't say such bullshit stuff, Susan.
I've just found out Roger's not been watching all my media appearances.
Oh, my word.
Very disappointed.
So if you want to see that one, it's actually on Freda's YouTube channel.
Yeah,
but you know what? What's your YouTube channel called?
Just Miss
Freda Willis. Yeah, so it's on there if you want to go and watch it.
But it's actually I looked for it actually the other day because I wanted to post it again, and I noticed it was also on the 4 Women Scotland YouTube.
No, Roger is saying he's not had internet service, so maybe that's the reason.
Well, that's any excuse.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the 4 Women Scotland have put it on their page, and I'm thinking, well. And it's obvious she failed there.
Yeah, they're trying to put it out as a Susan victory, but it certainly was not a Susan victory. No. I mean, whenever she can't come up with an answer, she just starts this kind of weird giggling thing. A lot of
the TERFs and the GC people, they talk about winning, don't they? A lot. They talk, we're going to win this battle, or yeah. And I've seen Graham Linehan say that this is the year we win, and
that's the year
and I just think, what is it you want to win? You'll run out of energy before the world runs out of trans people. Young people aren't listening to you.
Exactly.
They're on TikTok.
They'll all have died off by them.
Yeah, they're watching TikTok and they're looking at Kim Petras and Sam Smith.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what young people.
Exactly.
That's what young people are doing.
Yeah, they're not listening They're not listening to Susan Smith of.
So like when I go on these things and I write the stuff that I write about TERFs, I think I'm just wasting my time really, because really it's not. I think it's the next generation of people that will change this. We're entrenched in it at the moment. We're too close to the coalface to have a realistic. Well, I am anyway. I can't. It's kind of consumed me recently.
Well, you've done quite a few. I think that was your 5th appearance, wasn't it, on TV recently?
Yeah.
Yeah, you've done quite a lot. I mean, we've spoken about this, and we've spoken about how stressful it is going on there. But yeah, you are actually right on the coalface of getting the hatred, and Graham Linehan's posting unpleasant things about you. That's not for everybody. Not everybody who's trans could do that, or would want to do that, or could have the spoons to do it, as they say.
Well, I'm a bit like my friend Jonah here in the chat, that we go in for it, we see, because we like a good argument. So
yeah,
I bait that kind of. I can never say seriously.
But if you're going to do it, you've got to be able to handle the experience, haven't you? You've got to be able to handle the reaction you're going to get.
That's
you've
what
got to
be
saying. Super confident in where you stand.
Yeah, I'm saying that I can't complain ever and say, oh my God, this person's saying this about me, because realistically, I put myself in the way of it. And there are cases where I have had, private messages that have just been abhorrent, and that's different. But if I'm actually if I'm going to someone, like say I'll comment on Graham Linehan, I know what I'm getting myself into there. I know the game. But it's a game that I don't. It doesn't negatively affect me, that, because I don't take him seriously.
Yeah.
It's when people try and like what happened to me recently, where people trying to use pictures of me against me and things like that. Because that's just really petty, and it's like it's kind of a control thing that they want. But they can't, they'll never be able to affect me in that. I don't think that being online I've had more benefits from being on Twitter. I've met more nice people. I've had much better relationships with people because of it.
Yeah.
So in terms of a balance, because a lot of people say, "Oh, stay off Twitter, stop doing that." My mum says that a lot. She says, "Oh, stay off the internet, you'll be fine."
I mean, you think about it. If you and I weren't on Twitter, we probably wouldn't be doing Gender Nebulous together, would we?
Well, there's that. See,
So whether that's a benefit, I don't know.
No, I love doing this. I just hope we get more people watching, because it's kind of...
So we do have some exciting news, don't we, coming up? Saturday afternoon, for example.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're going to be dancing with...
BBC Radio Manchester.
That's it, yeah. We're getting our podcast featured on it's called The Upload Show.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what The Upload Show is. I don't think I've ever listened to it. Maybe I should.
It's David Scott's show on BBC Radio Manchester on Saturdays, and he'll just have like a local artist on, or a content creator. He's had poets on, and he's had like bands on before. It's just whatever people send him, really.
So is he ready for Gender Nebulous? This is the question.
Yeah. Well, right. We don't know yet. I've not spoken to him yet.
So we go. What time are we going to be on? 6:30, is it? Saturday,
something like that. Yeah, they said they'd give us a call about 6:30. Right.
So that should be fun. And then Sunday morning we're doing.
We'll have to be on our best behaviour for the BBC.
Yes, and Sunday morning we're doing a podcast with Kirsty Miller, the Australian sports person, talking about transgender inclusion in sports. So that'll be good.
She knows.
It's not going to be live, but I'll try and get it out later on Sunday. Sometime or next week sometime, but that should be interesting. That's to counteract all the stuff that was in the Sharon Davis TV thing that you did.
I know, and I didn't even get to speak to her after. Well,
I mean, Kirsty saw it and she was like, "Right, I'm coming on. We're going to talk about this." I said, "Okay, right."
Yeah. But she said I did all right on it, because
she did.
She was saying that. Like the thing is, like, when it comes the statistics that Sharon Davis uses are coming from a very specific kind of lobby group, and we know who they are. Like what they call Fair Play for Women or something. All these lobby groups against trans are always coming to a point of view of like, well, we're speaking up for women, but really they're not. They don't give a shit about, because if they gave a shit about that, they'd be funding grassroots girls' sports, wouldn't they? Don't be wasting the time looking at what trans women are doing. You look a bit distracted there, Victoria.
I was just reading some of the comments.
Well, I thought you were watching Coronation Street. No. Well,
Freda's never off the bloody telly.
I know. Well, I was supposed to be on with Julia Hartley-Brewer the other day.
Yeah, you got.
And I got a call from the producer, and he was like, "Yeah, will you be ready at 7:00 in the morning?" I was like, "Oh, go on then." So I got up about 5:30, 6:00, got ready for it, did my research. I'm waiting, and nobody's calling me. I was like, so I bet somebody said, "Oh, it's that Freda Wallace that's been on. She was on the other day, and she was on with Ian Collins, and she ripped him a new arsehole."
I think Julia Hartley-Brewer was probably a bit afraid of having you on.
She's scared to death of me, that bitch. I'm telling you.
And then Jonas wants to know if we're in the same room. He's confused.
No, we're in separate. Vicky's somewhere.
I'm in my house, and Freda's in hers.
Yeah. It's all technical.
It's all very nebulous.
We can get you on, Jonah, if you want.
You'll have to sign a disclaimer first, though.
Yeah. So is there anything else we need to talk about? All that stuff about tax was boring, Vicky. God, I was falling asleep here.
Well, you wanted to talk about freedom of expression, so is there anything you want to say on that before we go?
Yeah, just whatever you want to be, just be it. My name's Freda. Free to do what I want any old time.
Free. Da. Yeah, I get it now. I understand.
See, get it? Did you get it?
Freda of expression. Yeah.
And well, I always like, you know, all this legal stuff about your identity and bloody passports, driving licenses, bank statements. It's all just legal.
It's legal mumbo jumbo, but it's important.
And but your real sense of self shouldn't really come from that. But like I said, when I did get my passport with my picture and it said female, it was like it felt like a unlocking a level. Do you know what I mean? Like it felt like I'd gone to and it shouldn't really feel like that. But that's just the world we live in, isn't it? So we have to navigate this stupid world.
We do indeed.
But I think I'm gonna tackle subjects from a more sort of spiritual point of view from now on.
We've got the legal one out the way now, so we can focus on more kind of
because I'm a fully paid up believer in gender woo woo. So there you go. Whatever that is,
okay,
but you know that
can we have a definition, please?
Mojo. Gender sex mojo.
Gender mojo.
Yeah, voodoo.
Yeah. All right.
Sex, whatever spirit makes you whoever you are. That's the real you. I don't care. If science can't define it, fine. Science needs to do better. Not me. You know what I mean?
So don't forget to subscribe. There's a subscribe. The subscribe.
Can I sing it?
If you want to
sing it,
go ahead.
Don't forget to subscribe.
Yeah, you're pointing the wrong way, but you know.
Oh.
You have to point this way because the sign is here. You see how my hand disappears there? That's the wonders of technology. Yeah.
Right. We're going to say goodbye now because
we're going to say goodbye. We've run over. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for the posts. Yeah. Sarah says, I like the way they vanish in the end, leaving just the starry background. Yes, that's what we're about to do. So I guess we'll be back on Sunday for our next amazing show. Well, I say amazing, but you know.
Well, you know, we'll do our best.
Yeah, we'll do our best. Catch you later. Bye.